Mr. Speaker, may I begin by associating myself with the condolences that the Prime Minister has expressed to the victims of both the outrages to which he referred. We send our sincerest sympathy to the families of the victims of those terrible events. 2 weeks ago, the Health Secretary said that he wanted to cut administration costs in his department by a third. Can the Prime Minister tell us by how much those costs have gone up in the last 5 years?
Well, I can tell him that overall in the National Health Service, that the biggest increase that we have, well, first of all, actually, incidentally, sorry. First of all, I should welcome the Right Honourable Gentleman to his new position. And to say how delighted I am that someone written off under the last Conservative government is now given the chance to rehabilitate himself under Labour. As for the staff, yes, it's true, we want to streamline and slim down the number of staff at the centre in the health service, but the biggest thing that we are doing is actually increasing the number of nurses and doctors in the health service. And of course, that is a result of the extra money, the money that he opposed when he had the chance to vote for it a few months ago.
Well, I'm very grateful to the Prime Minister for his warm words of welcome, but I'm afraid he really didn't answer the question. Let me give him the answer. Administration costs in the Department of Health have actually gone up by a third. So an extra £229 million has been spent on running the Department of Health, and now the Health Secretary tells us it was all a waste of money. Let's try the Treasury. Has anyone told the First Lord of the Treasury how much administration costs there have increased in the last 5 years? Can you give us that figure?
I fear he's already got the answer, but I can tell him what overall government administration costs. Government administration costs actually as a proportion of spending have fallen under this government. But before I come to the Treasury, I would like just to deal with what the extra money in the National Health Service has bought. Because he was saying the other day that all this money has gone in. He was saying it's all gone into administration and none of it has gone into patient care. Well, let me tell him that actually as a result of this extra money, we've increased the number of people allowed into hospital operations by 250,000. We've increased the number of people given primary care. We've increased the number of cancer specialists. We've cut the number of people suffering from heart disease. We've got 24 major new hospitals built, 50,000 nurses, and again, he's opposed every penny piece of it.
Well, Mr. Speaker, 2 questions asked, neither answered. Not a very good start, I'm afraid. The fact is that administration costs at the Treasury have gone up by 52%. And the truth is that since he became Prime Minister, the cost of running government departments, not frontline services, the cost of running government departments has gone up by 50%. That's nearly £7 billion a year. Isn't that eloquent testimony to the ineffectiveness, the ineptitude, and the sheer incompetence of this government, all at the expense of the hard-pressed British taxpayer?
Right. Well, we want to talk about ineptitude and incompetence, do we? Fortunately, we have a record under this Chancellor in charge of the Treasury and under that Right Honourable Gentleman when he was an economics minister in the last Conservative government. So let's compare who is inept, who is incompetent, who wasted money. Under the Conservatives, 15% interest rates when he was an economics minister. When he was employment minister, 1 million extra unemployed. 1 million people in negative equity. £80 billion worth of government debt. Under this Chancellor, the lowest interest rates, inflation and unemployment for decades. 1.5 million more people in work. And let me say one other thing. Whatever this side has done, none of us, when in government, introduced anything as bad as the poll tax. what he introduced, as well as giving us the 15% interest rates, as well as opposing the minimum wage. And that's why we say, same old people, same old policies, same old Tories.
Well, let me make it absolutely clear. I'm very happy to debate the past with the Prime Minister any day he likes. Any day he likes. I've got a great big dossier on his past. I've got a great big dossier on his past, and I haven't even had to sex it up. We can talk about his personal pledge to leave the European Union. We can talk about the time that he criticized America's state-sponsored terrorism. I wonder if he'll be raising that with President Bush next week. Or we can talk about the time that he praised the fortitude and resolve of the Wapping strikers. I bet he doesn't remind Rupert Murdoch of that. I'm very happy to debate the past with him any day of the week. But I rather think that the British people are more interested in today and tomorrow than in yesterday. And we will take every opportunity to remind them of the failures today of his discredited government.
I'm very happy to debate today with them as well. Let's look, for example, at his own constituency and what has happened today. Yes, I think so. In his constituency, 11 schools have benefited from the New Deal for Schools funding that he pledged to scrap. The number of 5, 6 and 7-year-olds in classes of over 30 has fallen from 12,000 to 249. We've had the best results for primary schools, GCSE, A-levels that we've ever had. All the waiting times are down. Yes. And that is precisely the difference, that this party is putting money into our public services, getting results in every constituency in the country, and what we know from him is that he doesn't simply represent the past, he would take us back to the past. Adrian Bailey, Michael Hart.
Why was it necessary for his spokesman to say yesterday that the relationship between the Prime Minister and the Chancellor continues to be one of the great strengths of the government?
Probably because he was asked a question.
Well, if the answer is true, why was that legendary peacemaker, the Deputy Prime Minister, brought in to mediate between them? Isn't it an absolute disgrace that while the people of this country feel so let down over schools, over hospitals and over crime, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor of the Exchequer spend their time squabbling over who should sit on the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party?
Isn't it extraordinary that the right honourable gentleman, with the record he had when in government, actually turns round and attempts to say that people in this country are suffering today under the Chancellor? Well, what if they're suffering under the Chancellor? What was it like when we had 1 million people repossessed through negative equity? Right? What was it like when we had 1 million extra unemployed when he was the employment secretary? What do they think it was like when people had 15% interest rates? And what we had a moment or two ago, Mr. Speaker, when you, of course, quite rightly disallowed the question from my honourable friend, it was interesting the reaction on the benches opposite to any discussion of their patients' passport policy. Because if we're talking about the National Health Service, what would be a disaster for people in the health service today is to be forced to top up their treatment with a voucher that would cost thousands of pounds for basic health care, that would mean that ordinary people in the health service didn't get that care. And I tell them this, it's not just his record in government we're going to be discussing, it's his policies now, because those policies are just the same as the policies that brought disaster before.